What is it like to experience something that was so boundary pushing, something so stylistically different and artistically unique, just for it not to get the recognition and push it deserves from its creators? Not the audience, but the creators themselves choosing to cut it off before it could become a real big household name. I know it's Jet Grind Radio in most places, but let's be honest, Jet Set Radio rolls off the tongue better. Both games in this series have a massively devoted following. They are some of the first games to really lean heavily into using cell shading for stylistic purposes. They tapped into the youthful, rebellious skate culture that was forming worldwide in the late 90s and 2000s. And then suddenly, they stopped making them all together, locking their second game onto the original Xbox, which was nowhere near the most popular console of that generation. And then it was just that. At most, we get a reference or a cameo in a crossover game here and there, but that's really it. The only game series Sega really doubled down and pumped out was Sonic, Yakuza, which I'm not complaining, the Yakuza games are great, and hopefully you'd get a Puyo Puyo, Monkey Ball, or Virtua Fighter here and there. Just a side note, we can never have enough Monkey Ball. I love Monkey Ball. So to recap, we've got two beloved games, a loyal fan base, and no games? What do you think the solution to this was? Simple. The fans just made their own successor to the legacy of Jet Set Radio. That successor being the indie darling 2023 release, Bomb Rush Cyberfunk. So come along with me as I talk about one of my favorite games ever made and how it surpassed its influences. And let me know what you feel about this game down below. Let's get that conversation going. But for now, Bomb Rush Cyberfunk. Let's talk about it. Before we talk about the game itself, let's talk about the people who made the game. Team Reptile. They're a Dutch indie studio. The first game they made was called Megabyte Punch, which I haven't played but seems like a fun side-scrolling beat-em-up. But if you were around for the early 2010s, you definitely know them for their hit game Lethal League. It was a massive hit, and it's the game that definitely defined their style. This was the first game where they really leaned into hip-hop and alternative culture as a major stylistic choice. This of course led them to releasing the follow-up a few years later called Lethal League Blaze, and soon after that we get teased on their major passion project, Bomb Rush Cyberfunk. The game's director is Dion Coaster, co-founder of Team Reptile, who according to IMDb directed the first Lethal League and did character designs for both games. I wish I could get more confirmation on any other sites, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of information out there on who did what on Bomb Rush Cyberfunk. At least, not much that I could find outside of him being the game director. Interestingly, this game pulls a lot of influences from Coaster's own life. He says he spent a lot of time getting into breakdancing, graffiti, and skating. The reason why the city in the game is called New Amsterdam is because he went to Amsterdam a lot as a kid. This game is essentially a mix of his personal influences, experiences, and interests all mixed into one unique expression. I also respect in his interview with PC Gamer that he acknowledges that much of this culture comes from New York and the US. It's not much, but I always respect when people acknowledge where a culture comes from. I actually recommend checking out that interview after you watch this video. Obviously. More or less, this game was made as a major example of self-expression for Coaster, showing people the culture he grew up in and he loves. It's very admirable. But yeah, that's all the fun little tidbits and pieces of development info I could get on this game's development. Let's switch gears and talk about the game itself. Let's start by talking about the gameplay. This game is the ultimate throwback to the old style of open-ish world skateboard games, but given some modern tune-ups. Obviously, this game's not aiming for realism, so you don't have to worry about things like physics, like how the skate games deal with that. The combo system is meant to be more arcadey and completely unrealistic. It's an extrapolation of the arcade-style fun of the Jet Set Radio and Tony Hawk games, though it's closer to the earlier Tony Hawk games and say the later games like Proving Ground. It's a system that genuinely is as smooth as butter. And I don't really struggle to do combos and make a ton of points, though grinding seems to be the way that gets most points consistently. There is a bit of a struggle at first, but once you get down the idea of how to make big points, you'll be fine. The game also has some sections that play closer to a platformer than a traditional skate game. And while I don't hate these sections, I feel like they're a great challenge sometimes. Other times they can be a little frustrating. Not because I'm ass at the game or anything, but more because these mechanics don't feel like they're built for platforming. At least not in the traditional way. Like the momentum isn't exactly quite as accurate to be a movement platformer like a 3D Mario game, and the speed isn't exactly fast enough to be comparable to Sonic, nor are the controls precise enough to be compared to say Rayman or a Crash Bandicoot. These sections are not terrible by any means, most of them are just fine mechanically. Visually, they're a feast for the eyes, and story-wise they're my favorite parts of the games, But mechanically, I feel like there's times I died not because I genuinely screwed up, but because the controls just decided to disagree with me at that point in time. Though to be fair, I guess turning a skate game into a 3D platformer would probably do that. Though speaking of the story, let's pivot into that. I love the story of this game. It's incredibly straightforward, but surprisingly has layered ideas and themes, mostly revolving around the ideas of rebellion, alternative culture, and those we allow within those cultures. On the surface, you could say the story is a generic rebellious youth story, but I genuinely think that has more to say about these kinds of subcultures. Especially since the main villain of the story, which is a spoiler I won't give away here, seems like the most obvious commentary on this point. It's a pretty subtle commentary on how the cultures we reside in are very much a part of our identity as we are to them. It comments on the sort of symbiotic nature of subcultures that nobody has ownership over. Part of me wonders if this game's story was inspired by Air Gear because I can see some similarities. I don't want to spoil the twists and turns too much, but I genuinely was enraptured by this cyberpunk-ish colorful world, or as I like to describe this game's aesthetic, cyberhop. A mix of the colorful stylings of early hip-hop and rap with the underground roguish feelings of punk. Basically, it's a merging of the two rebellious genres of music and sci-fi together in a beautiful way. Though historically and ideologically, punk and rap are kinda like cousins if you think about it. Now I quickly want to mention the music of the game. It's phenomenal. I'm not usually the type to just listen to game OSTs whenever I'm out or doing something, but this is one of the rare examples. Though that's mostly because they pulled in real EDM artists, DJs, and producers and placed their songs in the game. Kinda like how Tony Hawk would do that with popular skate songs, but instead with DJ artists, underground or not. I'd especially love to highlight the work of the legendary Hideki Naganuma, as well as the work of 2Mello. These two had my favorite tracks of the whole game. You get an overall cohesive sound to this game, yet with all sorts of vibes. Sometimes it's angry, or bubbly, and sometimes it can be pretty sad. But overall, this is easily a top 5 game soundtrack for me. And that's all I want to talk about this game, but I still want more. But how do I accomplish that, you may ask? Well, luckily this game is one of the most devoted modding communities for an indie game I've ever seen. So as I said in the end of the last section, the modding community for this game is top tier. Thunderstorm Mod Manager and Game Banana have been lifesavers for me when it comes to this game. With just one app and one website, I think I've downloaded like dozens of new characters, skins, and maps. I mean, what other game could you play as Michelangelo from the TMNT, skating on the Jack 2 jetboard in Bikini Bottom? Specifically the map from the iconic game Battle for Bikini Bottom. Just for a moment, let me lay some knowledge on you. Firstly, let me tell you about the mods that I think are the best or absolutely necessary for your Bomb Rush modding experience. The number one most necessary mod you need is Beppin EX. Literally no other mod you install will work without Beppin EX. Almost everything connects back to it somehow. As for the other mods, these ones are just really good that I think they're essentially necessary for modding. Firstly, get Crew Boom. This is the mod that'll let you add way more characters into your game. And they won't just be skins to overlap other characters that are already there. No, these are all different and unique characters. And this is also where Game Banana comes in. If you go into Game Banana, you could get all sorts of skins and characters and all sorts of stuff. Essentially, this is the site you go to grab characters and all that, and then plug them into these mods so you could play the game this way. Then get Drip Remix. This is for adding skins to your skateboards, your skates, and your bikes, and if you want. It's not as complicated as Crew Boom, you're not going to get too much, but it's fun allowing you to add in your unique boards. And then Music Curator. This basically lets you create playlists however you want within the game, as well as add some new music too. In fact, due to this mod I found, I got a great MF Doom remix that also came with a great skin. I'll link that one down below in the description if you're somehow interested. And one more map that I think is really good to have is Map Station. This is what allows you to install so many extra maps in the game. Because of this mod, I've not only skated Bikini Bottom, but also Traverse Town, Woohoo Island, and so many more I can't name here. Now, as for a mod I think is fun, but maybe not necessary, is the movement mod called Movement Plus. It's essentially a complete overhaul of how momentum and movement works within the game. I mean, it's a major change to how it works. I've literally slingshotted myself across entire maps of this mod before. It is a very wild mod and changes the game completely. Doesn't make it worse or better, but definitely is a very different vibe. But, of course, Bomb Rush Cyberfunk is great for all sorts of reasons. In a sense, unlike many games today, it's one of those rare, unique artistic statements that's bound to form a community around it. It's not just a conglomeration of references or just a Jet Set Radio successor. It's far more than that. It's a gateway into a new culture, to either re-immerse yourself with something you haven't been given in years or to introduce yourself to new ideas and experiences. It's here not just to be a game, but to also make you get out there and find out that there is a community for you. As long as you are yourself and willing to genuinely express that, you'll find that you're not truly alone. And to me, this is what allows Bomb Rush Cyberfunk to be more than just its influences, and to be a game that we needed and not just wanted. As for the fate of Jet Set Radio, Sega seems to be in a better place now, able to focus on many of their series, mainly due to great sales of the recent Sonic games, the Yakuza series, and the massive amounts of money Atlus probably makes for them now. That, along with the new president that seems to actually want to make games and not pachinko machines. Who knows? Maybe this is the start of a new wave of AAA companies recognizing the merit of unique expression within the gaming space. I mean, Sega and Capcom these past few years have really seemed to catch on to this, though many others have not. But who's to say? Luckily, at least in the indie scene, we'll always get games like Bomb Rush Cyberfunk. And yeah, that's all I really gotta say about that. Did you like the video? Did you not? How do you feel about Bomb Rush Cyberfunk and really any other games like this? I'm really hoping that BRC is the example that will probably bring out more games like it. Not exactly within the exact same style, but rather more games that are willing to express unique ideas and not just to be another Metroidvania or roguelike. Not to say that those genres are bad, but you know, maybe a little bit more exploration would be fine. But with all that being said, I'll see you next time.